Hi everyone, Dan and Pat from the Tea Club here. We're going to be answering your questions about the General Winter's Secret Museum 10-year anniversary.
10 years.
Yes, so you interview us about our first album.
Great questions, by the way, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So,
awesome, wonderful, excellent questions. Really tough, hard,
annoying,
grueling questions.
No, they're great
questions. Thank you.
So let's start off with this one.
Who is it?
This is Chris Nichols.
Chris. Hi, Chris.
Chris says, you guys have any plans on releasing the album on vinyl?
God, I would love to do that.
Yeah. I think I would love to re-release it on vinyl and then include the 2 tracks that were left off of it.
Yes.
The thing with vinyl is that it's so expensive. We definitely would do that if we had the funding. And it's totally not out of the question, I think. Steve DeMarco says,
Steve. What's up, Steve?
Looking back on your first album, what song do you like? I genuinely like them all.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that really strikes me is the second song, which is called Cool Smack. And there is this part about halfway through the song where Pat has this really beautiful guitar part that comes in.
Thanks, bro.
And it just always gives me chills every time I hear it. And then it goes into total cacophony after that. And there's
freak out solo.
We both did one.
Freak out solo.
We both did a freak out like
guitar
fuzzed
solo.
out guitar solo, like a noise solo. I just remember being in there and just like literally like ripping strings off of the guitar and just trying to make the most hideous sounds possible. Craig Van Hise says, What is the first song that the brothers McGowan wrote together?
Good.
Is there a recording?
Good segue.
And that is on General Winter's Secret Museum. That's The Moon.
Yeah, man.
Pat wrote it on the guitar, and then I had this really old Yamaha keyboard that I still have that I insist on using, even though the sounds are really cheesy. Although I feel like they've kind of come back in vogue now. It's from like 1997, 98,
No,
the
not
20
yet.
year.
Not yet.
Yeah, so I remember playing that on a dulcimer sound.
Dulcimer.
Yeah.
I think it said dulcimer on the little LED.
Yeah.
I remember it being like
160.
probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Dan and I were working on that song. We were pretty young. We were both teenagers.
Yeah.
I had the sort of basic chord structure, and Dan came up with this cool ding 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 ding
Yeah, yeah.
ding 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 ding. And that part. We started off as a keyboard guitar duo.
Yeah.
We were ahead of our time.
Yeah, yeah. Brandon Thunderstand Gorman
Brandon.
says,
That's a weird middle name, man.
Thunderstand.
That's abusive. That's an abusive thing for your family to do that to you.
Let's not roast our
You're right. I'm sorry. You guys are great.
Brandon Thunderstand Gorman says, a lot of times, first albums can be a collection of songs written over many years. Is that the case here, or did it all come together shortly before recording?
Total collection.
Yeah. Like, so The Moon was really old. I think, like, Werewolves was kind of old.
Ice Clock was old.
Ice Clock was that was an old one. But then Will-O-the-Wisp we had written that year.
What happened was we demoed every song that we had at the time, which was about 20 or 25 songs. We went back and listened to the demos, and we tried to pick out the songs that we thought kind of went together to make it cohesive, even though it was written haphazardly over a period of probably 6 or 7 years. So we picked the songs we thought flowed the best, that worked together. That's what we have for the album, which I think worked out really well.
There's a lot of demos that we have been releasing on Patreon, and
Yes.
we will continue to do that. Bali Ruse. So Bali says, when I listen to the Tea Club, I can clearly hear the way that Pat and Dan feed off, vibe off, and complement each other. It's poetic and seems to grow stronger, and there is no apparent ego battle or something like a band of brothers like Oasis.
No.
Can you speak to the ways that you, Pat and Dan, have grown to understand and complement each other through the creative process? And opening up to the rest of the band, what is it like working with 2 brothers that have been making music together for a while now? I hear coherence in all of the Tea Club, not just the guitar and vocals.
Awesome.
That's great. Since the other guys aren't here right now, I
Sorry,
will
guys.
not speak for them, but I can imagine that
They would probably say that they love working with us.
it's so pleasant.
And everything is very organized.
Yeah, very organized. As far as like being brothers in the band. I don't think that we have that kind of feuding.
Ego thing?
Yeah.
No, not really, man.
We're both.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big love fest. Like
It
we're
is a
both
love fest,
each
yeah.
other's biggest fans.
I'm with you, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I think I love you. I think you're great.
Yeah. Hey.
Dan and I have a we're real close brothers.
Yeah.
We
We were
don't-
never really
yeah.
fighters.
I mean, when we were really young, I would sit on Dan a lot.
Yeah, that was Pat's
That's
thing.
what-
He was much
I would
bigger, so
sit-
he could.
Yeah, it was quite.
It was
fat.
kind of like.
And so I would sit. Dan was not. And
No, I
would
was a
sit
strong
on
little
him,
guy.
and he wouldn't be able to sit. I was sort of
It's
like
a
working
little-
out some Brazilian jiu-jitsu as a.
I was gonna say it's
As an
more like
8-year-old.
when Thor would put his hammer on Loki, you know, and because he's
Okay.
not worthy, he can't lift it. So
Yeah.
he's just like, so that was me.
Okay.
Yeah.
We do egg each other on in the studio, especially. We make it a point to try to be there when the other person is tracking
Yeah.
and really encouraging and pushing each other.
And we know each other's strengths. We can be very critical of each other,
Yep.
and but it's very honest, and it's like, I really appreciate it. I know I need it. Andy Masterson says,
Andy.
the 10-year mark. Have you noticed a change in the audience? Is it still the classic prog rock fans, or do you notice younger people developing better taste in music instead of just the canned, mass-produced auto-tune? It's a great question.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like both of those things are expanding. I'm seeing a lot of young people getting into prog rock. I think
Agreed.
it's as everything that was once nerdy becomes cool. Prog rock is like, yo, this
Yeah,
is
it's
a
the
long time
ultimate.
coming.
Yeah.
So that's encouraging.
I agree.
I've noticed that the audience is for prog seems to be getting a little less self-conscious, which is nice. I
Yeah,
think the
that's a
less
good way to put it.
self-conscious
That's a good way to put it.
that there used to be this kind of guilty pleasure about it, but there seems to be a little bit more pride in just like, yo, this is great music. Nick Amato. Nick says,
Nick.
10 years is a long time, gentlemen.
Did it well.
What keeps you guys grinding through the highs and lows? What was your biggest setback and what was your greatest achievement? And did you ever consider calling it quits? What keeps us going through the highs and the lows?
Dan and I are really good at it, we think, and we enjoy it a lot. And the highs are really great.
Like spiritually fulfilling.
Yeah. And I think that justifies all the lows for sure.
It's kind of just what we do. We must do it, What was your biggest setback and what was your greatest achievement?
Not having a stable
Not
lineup.
having a stable lineup has been probably the hardest thing about it.
Yeah, a lot of starting and stopping and restarting and
Yeah.
stopping and hard to
It
get
interrupts momentum, yeah.
momentum.
But I would say our greatest achievement, I think, just building a body of work.
Yeah.
Like, I went back and listened to our first album. I listened to General Winters, and I was just like, this is great. I love this. I was expecting to go back and listen to it and be like, ugh. But I love it.
We have these little snapshots of stuff that we were doing, and we made stuff and we made some art, and it still exists, and it may outlive us.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. We thought about doing something, and then we actually did it.
And we
and that's
did it.
not easy to do.
It's not.
It's really not easy to do.
It's really hard, and we put everything we had into it, each one of them, and they're kind of like our like our children, and I love the little family that we have, and we're adding to it, and I actually have a son, so I'm even adding to the family
Having an actual
biologically.
biological
Yeah.
child as well as the songs.
Hi Finn. He's great.
Hi Finn in the future.
Hi Finn in the future. Right now, future Finn he just got up and left.
I'm gonna go watch the Avengers 6.
The Avengers 36.
Oh, and did you ever consider calling it quits? Yes.
Bunch of times. Many times.
Yeah. Benjamin White.
Benjamin
I
White.
like this one. He says, "What is the moon about?" It's a lot of the moon's getting mentioned a lot.
Yeah, good
It
one.
sounds like an elegy for autumn, a fuck you to the coming winter. Or is it more existential or something else entirely? I'm glad that's coming up because that song's really important. That was the first song that I ever wrote a melody to and lyrics. Pat was definitely like the veteran songwriter at that point, and I remember being like, okay, I wrote this thing, I'm gonna sing it for you. And I remember like being like practically on the verge of tears playing this for you and singing it for you. I did not want to do it because it was so vulnerable. And that's why like anybody who sings their own songs that they write, like,
God bless you.
that's not easy to do. And I say that to anybody who is insecure about singing or insecure about writing and showing it to people. It's like, that's an act of courage. And
Agreed.
That was a really big deal. You developed it with me. Like, you used some of the stuff that I had come up with. You used all of the lyrics, but you transformed the melody and made it flow a little bit more. But all that little da 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 da. Yeah, we kept. But you were like, oh, that's good. We'll keep that.
So what was it
about?
Yeah.
It's about the transition from fall into winter. When I wrote that, I was having what I would describe as a love affair with the season of autumn. I was absolutely obsessed with it.
That's a theme. That's a Tea Club theme.
Yeah, and it was like the first time that I realized, like, oh my God, I love this time of year. It's such a meaningful time of year for me. It changes the way everything looks and smells and feels. I feel different when it's fall. I feel much more alive. Yeah, so it's about the beauty of the fall and the kind of crushing death of the winter. And then what's funny is that there's actually a line in there where I say, torturing, taunting, your air will be worse. And that's about summer, because summer I hated even more than winter. Because summer is like, oh man, I gotta.
We're not summer guys. We're not summer people.
No, I don't like wearing. I like wearing layers. Yeah. John P. Yarger says.
John P. Yarger.
10 years. Wow. Congrats on the milestone. So my question would be.
Everybody's making me feel quite
seasoned.
Seasoned. Thank you. I feel seasoned.
Looking back on the first time walking into the studio with fresh music in your hands, I would assume that experience was a pure adrenaline rush and somewhat surreal. What are your fondest memories of that time? Over the years, has the writing and recording process become any easier now that you are seasoned veterans? He says seasoned.
Seasoned.
First time we walked into the studio, we met Tim Gillis, who was our producer, and Tim is about 9 feet tall.
Yeah, I think closer to 20.
Weighs about 1,000 pounds.
And in a good way.
In a good way, of pure muscle like the Kingpin. He was very nice, but he's just a very imposing figure. He also has a wicked sense of humor and is a big time ball breaker. Me and Pat were very sensitive kids from the suburbs, very, very inexperienced. We were driving to Jersey City to the studio and we got lost. We accidentally went to New York.
First time we ever went to New York City.
So we were kind of late bloomers.
Yeah.
And
that's a generous way to put it.
It was a culture shock.
Yeah, for sure.
Tim was just whipped our asses into shape.
Yeah, it was like boot camp. It was music.
It really was, and I'm really glad that it happened that way.
Done in a loving way, though.
Right.
Not in a cruel.
And it's stuff that I continue to think of as I get older.
It was a lot of fun. It was exciting. We were in this big multi-million-dollar studio, and we had this producer who was famous and had worked with great people, who was investing some time in us and money. They had a staff, and they were taking great care of us, and they were really serious about helping us make this album. And they took us really seriously. God bless them all.
Yeah.
We were very serious about it too, and it was grueling and it was difficult, and we were trying really hard to do the best we could. It just felt wonderful once we finished it. It was this wonderful achievement that we accomplished, that we had spent years preparing to do, and working with great people, making it happen, and all of that went into the performance and the arranging. So it was great. I also have a fond memory of recording acoustic guitar. I don't have it right now, but I have like a whistle. I have like a nose whistle.
Some kind of like
it's like a deviated septum or something. I have a nose whistle, and we could keep hearing it on the track. So I would do my acoustic part, and we would listen back, and we would be like, "What is that? What's that whistling? Oh, that's your nose." And having to take tissues and shove them into my nose, like literally just And
there's pictures.
There are pictures. That was a good memory. That's a good memory.
Yeah. I was thinking if you talk about your deviated septum, it's going to stir controversy in the prog rock community about how you may have had a nose job and you have like a Michael Jackson
Oh yeah, that'd
controversy.
Be great. People could study it.
Yeah.
People could take throughout the years.
2008.
How has Pat's nose changed?
Yeah. How did that nose whistle just go away?
Okay. Go.
So Tristan Gorman says, "What feelings were you working out?" I love how you just say they're Tristan.
Yeah, I'm acknowledging you.
Yeah. Tristan says, "What feelings were you working out while writing this album?"
Feelings.
I was, your average heartbroken, depressed, anxious 19, 20-year-old
Artist.
yeah, songwriter. It's like a coming of age thing, I guess. Like Castle Builder kind of has this melancholy world weariness about it. Where it's kind of like you get to a certain age and then suddenly you start to see that the world is bigger and scarier than maybe you realized.
Yeah, definitely. So some of the songs are, we wrote them over a period of years, so there wasn't like a real short period of time that they were created. So it did kind of span our, like you said, sort of coming of age, turning into young men, trying to understand what all that meant.
There's a lot of joy in that album too. There's some playfulness. Clincher, yeah, that's just a song that was
a fun song.
Yeah.
We've never really done anything like that lyrically, I don't think. A lot of that was balanced out by a lot of sentimentality, for sure.
Yeah.
Even some romanticism. I'm gonna venture to say The Moon has really beautiful lyrics. Ice Clock, I think Ice Clock was the last song to have lyrics written. There's some sadness, there's some longing in that song, and I think that sentimentality kind of carried over into the next album and the album after that.
I remember when we went back to record Rabbit after General Winters, some of the engineers made the joke that when we went in to record General Winters, which had some kind of playful music on it, we were miserable in the studio. And then when we went in to record Rabbit, which the lyrics are super heavy, much darker, we were just like goofing around the whole time. Like we were just having so much fun.
Yeah. That just goes to show you that therapy. Therapeutic music. Create the darkest music ever, and you will feel great.
So Dom Portera says, "What are some of the major ways your approach to and perspective on music has changed since each of you started with the Tea Club?" I would say my approach to songwriting has changed, and I think a lot of that had to do with our producer Tim. He would say, "You're not editing it and writing it at the same time." Especially when it came to lyrics and the vocals. I would say that there was always that kind of like, just go with the spark. Like you would come up with something on the guitar, it would be a really cool guitar part. I would come in, the first thing I played was just like, yeah, that's exactly it. And then once it came to doing the vocals, we were like really agonizing.
Yeah, more vulnerable.
I think the way that we write songs now is I'm writing it all at once. And it just tends to make it a little more cohesive and a little less pieced together.
Good, yeah. I guess for me, I was pretty insecure starting off. I didn't really think of myself as much of a musician or a songwriter. All I'm trying to do is I have these feelings that I'm trying to evoke using music, and I think I'm getting better and better at it, and I'm getting more confident in it. I was pretty dogmatic too. I would tune things out pretty quick if I didn't immediately like it. I think my ears have gotten bigger over the years.
That really happened around General Winters.
Yeah, it did.
That was the start of that.
That was the start.
Tim was very adamant, like, you must grow big ears.
Yeah. I was very much like, if it doesn't sound like this, or if it's not doing this, I'm not interested.
I remember
serious though, like
Tim telling us, like, listen for even the song that you hate, like, look for the good in it.
Right.
Chad Vanderwettering says, "What was the toughest?"
Sorry, I'm doing it.
So Chad says, "What was the toughest moment you experienced as a band, and what was the most rewarding and satisfying thing that you beautiful men accomplished?"
Ooh, I like it.
That's nice. It's similar to another question. Toughest moment.
Chad and Nick were sort of channeling each other.
Yeah. Yep. These two were on the same wavelength. That's good. Or bad. I don't know. Could be terrible. I'll tell another story about something tough that happened during General Winters. During the recording. I was like deathly ill. Remember?
Yes.
I felt fine doing the guitars, and I had some bass stuff I had to do and some percussion. And then it's like, all right, it's time for the vocals. Immediately, sinus infection. I was so stuffed up.
We had to stop, hopeless. Right? We had to stop one day.
I tried to record.
Yeah.
And they were just like, no. I was like, I feel like it probably sounds all right. Let me hear it. And like I listened to it, and it was hilarious. They were just like, "Yo, go get Dan some Mucinex." It cleared up enough that I was able to not sound totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
That was the most rewarding and satisfying thing about the album. I would say putting it together and holding the CD.
Yeah.
You know, was just like, wow, here we go. Like this is
getting
legit.
those mixes back for the first time.
Yeah. Remember the first one we got was Big Al, right?
Big Al.
Oh, it sounded so good.
We had,
were like,
you know,
what
we'd
the
never
hell?
had anything. We'd never heard our music taken that seriously before.
Yeah. And there was all kinds of little Easter eggs that Tim had added in the mix, and it was amazing.
That was great. Who do we got? Kevin. What's up, Kev?
Kevin Seckle says, "Have you considered reissuing the album on CD/vinyl at all?"
We were talking about doing it this year. We wanted to do it this year as like
Yeah.
10-year anniversary thing, but we just couldn't make it work. Couldn't make it work.
It's in the pipeline for sure. I want to do it with all of our albums.
Yeah.
So this is a two-part question. He says, "Are there any parts of the album that you feel you would do differently now in terms of recording process, songwriting, and instrumental arrangement?"
First thing that comes to mind for me is the original mix of the Moon. I think I would put that on there.
So on our Patreon, we released the first mix of the Moon, and the first mix of the Moon has like a flute part. It has this like big orchestral ending, and we just kind of wound up doing a different mix of it.
Yeah, we panicked.
Yeah.
And so
It's really hard if you're working with a producer to hear somebody add something to your song that wasn't there. It was like it's really, really, really challenging. I remember every time we would hear something that wasn't there, we'd just be like, no, that's not supposed to be there. And you really don't have this
that does take some
maturity.
time. Yeah, that takes some time.
Some people just continue to be like, no, this is my vision. Don't add anything on there. Like, this is it. But we learned to be really open about that and be like, okay, all right, let's listen to it again. Right.
If it was good, then it wins. If it's good, it wins.
If it's good, it wins.
Who we got?
Dan Brown.
Dan Brown.
Dan Brown says, "Who/what is General Winter, and what is his secret museum, or what does the title mean/represent? There might be some context in the unreleased track, but nothing is mentioned on the album."
Well, this is an interesting question. The title track that we cut does have some lyrical content that tells a story, that sheds some light onto the General Winter name. The name comes from the Russian winter. I was watching a show about Napoleon, and he sort of famously invaded Russia in the early 1800s and failed miserably.
I'm fact-checking this.
Someone referred to just the winter in Russia as its own army or own force to be reckoned with. So I think they referred to it as General Winter. We had this idea that we would create this character, General Winter. The Secret Museum is actually sort of represented visually. If you take the CD and you flip it around, the back cover is a picture of this knick-knack shelf that me and Dan and Jen, my wife Jen, we loved going to weird yard sales and antique stores, and we would find all these weird little knickknacks of strange figures and strange things. And we had this shelf, these like couple shelves in my room, and we would like position them all in these weird little spots and create this like museum, right, of strange knickknacks. So we took a picture of that because we were envisioning that this is the museum of oddities of this character, General Winter. But the song itself tells a specific story.
We're going to be releasing that song on July 1st.
July 1st.
On Patreon. We're going to include the lyrics, and we're going to include a little bit of the
so there it is.
song. And Dan Brown is already a patron, so he will actually get to see that.
Good for you, Dan.
Okay, so his was a two-part question. Is there an overall theme or underlying story to the album, or does each song represent its own separate story? Personally, I've always felt like most of the songs you guys have created are telling a metaphorical, deeper, more personal story in some way.
No, not like a conceptual thing.
But I've always tried to make sure that the songs feel like characters.
That happened with the artwork too.
Yeah.
I mean, each song had its own image
Right.
and character, and it kind of fit into the idea of it being a museum. Each song was sort of its own little piece in the museum.
From our, at the time it was like a 5-year history.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything up until that point.
Yeah.
We had, people say you have your whole life to write your first
Yeah.
album, so it was a museum of that stuff.
That's
Which had been a secret at the time.
Yeah. Well done. You tied it all up.
Sean Hoy.
Sean Hoy. I love this question.
Sean Hoy says, Pat/Dan, I have several questions that you and the Tea Club boys can dig into if you are up for laying it all out on the line. Do you feel that your approach to song is less restricted, less tight, more indulgent than it was 10 years ago? Less restricted. I would say yes.
Well, that kind of speaks to what you said earlier about the idea of critiquing and creating at the same time and how destructive that can be.
Yeah, yep. Do you also feel like being labeled as a progressive rock band makes you feel like you have to write music with those kind of sensibilities in a way that challenges or expands musical growth? I don't think that we do that consciously. At least I can't. In the initial creative process, you can't have that in mind. A lot of the best stuff comes from, for me at least, it's like an ADD thing where somebody's in the room, they're probably talking to me, they're probably telling me something that is very important that I need to do. I have a guitar in my hands, I'm just kind of like, oh, listen to this is kind of cool.
Well, I like the progressive label because to me it's always meant that you're trying to get better and better each time you do something, which I really like. I want that to be a big part of my life. I think the idea that if you're a progressive band, you've got to do certain things. I don't know if we've ever really struggled with that, honestly.
It's what we just wound up doing.
Yeah.
I think we fell into it pretty naturally.
I think you as a musician or an artist, you kind of control your label. If you feel like you're stuck in the prog label, just write an album that's not a prog album. Or write an album that is something very different.
Yeah.
And you're no longer labeled.
As the years of creating songs together have continued, are you concerned with peer reactions, or are you simply satisfied with how the band feels about the end result?
Not really that concerned with peers, although it's great to be respected or have your peers like what you do, think what you're doing is cool. So we listen to people. We don't just sort of stick our heads in the sand and do whatever we want. I mean, kind of, but I think we're still kind of just doing it because we want to do it.
Right. Will we ever see comics to older Tea Club records that outline a visual narrative? I could ask you a million more, but I'll leave some room for more questions from others. Hopefully that's a good springboard. I'll tune in for the interview. I never miss a Sage-like lecture. So that's a nice Big Al reference there. Will we ever see comics to older Tea Club records that outline a visual narrative? I don't know. I haven't really thought of it. I'm still trying to do the graphic comic.
Yeah, we're trying to get that done.
So if anybody doesn't know, drawing comic books is really hard.
It's really easy.
No, it's not.
It's really easy, and it should probably get done a lot sooner than.
Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard.
What I think was probably going to keep happening is as the comics progress, if you're following them and reading them, I think you'll see things from previous albums showing up here and there. I love the idea of expanding sort of the storytelling idea into comics and stories and things like that. That's becoming more of an option for us. I think we like to have the option that we have this outlet. This is the actual last question.
Yeah, this is the actual last question. David Bowden says, Dan and or Pat, what song or band made you want to play prog rock?
Oh, that's easy. King Crimson for me, baby.
King Crimson, yeah.
That band changed my whole brain.
Yeah.
My brain changed when I started listening to that band.
I love King Crimson, but I think listening to Relayer by Yes was just kind of like, I'm down for this. I like this genre.
Let's do that one. Love it.
So I just want to say thank you to everybody who sent in questions. I think we got all the questions.
Great questions.
If we didn't, we're sorry. We love you. We're going to be releasing the title track for General Winter on our Patreon, and then we're going to be right into promoting our next album, our
fifth album.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you for asking good, serious questions and for taking it seriously.
Yeah.
It means a lot to us. Thank you so much.
We hope that we provided thoughtful answers to your questions. Yeah, thanks.
Peace.